All right. Well, we're back for another episode of Constructive Criticism. I'm Zach Simmons, joined by my co-host, Kale Lopp. How you doing, buddy?
Hey guys, I'm good. I'm really excited to have Jake on and talk about some of the stuff that we've been discussing behind the scenes, a little bit about how the construction and design industry responds to tribal projects, how we respond to those aspects, as well as Zach and I are entrepreneurs in our own right, trying to stand up different, design or construction businesses. And Jacob, you're, a brewery owner. So,
Well,
what that looks like.
I mean, let's give a little bit of background and
Yeah,
introduction.
I'm sharing the whole thing
You're
right
jumping
off the
ahead,
bat.
man. No,
Sorry.
for our listeners, today we were joined by Chairman Jake Keys of the Iowa Tribe and also founder of Skydance Brewery here in Oklahoma City. Getting ready to open your third location, I believe is correct. So first and foremost, Jake, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm glad to be on here. I was interested in the name of the podcast. That's one of my favorite terms. I'm gonna have to make sure my wife knows that term because
Constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Just to give a little bit of context, and for our new listeners, the purpose of this podcast is, Kale and I have obviously sat on different sides of the industry, and you know, managing development for both the Iowa Tribe as well as for yourself, you've seen the issues that plague the industry, both in schedule and in cost and in just design development. And so we want to take a look at those issues across Oklahoma, look at them both critically, but then propose, some constructive method or at least a meet in the middle to how we can not only better the industry, but better our interaction with our clients and, for prospective developers or people that are in the same situation of, maybe this is a resource that offers an avenue that they hadn't thought of or hadn't been proposed. That's really the whole thing of this. Before we get too far, let's do a little bit of background for you of just um, where you come from, where Skydance originated. Ultimately, I know sitting as chairman of the Iowa Tribe is a big part of your life today, and just how that all transpired.
Yeah, it's a heck of a story sometimes when I look back on it. I'm trying to figure out how it all even happened. But yeah, so the brewery, we'll start with the brewery. That came kind of first. So I started the brewery really in 2018. We brewed over at the Brewers Union. I don't know, some of your listeners may know about the Brewers Union, but it's basically a co-op space that was shared with multiple breweries. That was sort of just a place to get started while you built out your own location. And so we started over there in 2018, and that was really just a culmination of like years and years of me and my dad had a dream to start a brewery, and I started brewing with him when I was a little kid, like 12 years old. He was a home brewer, so he taught me how to brew, and we just kind of did that forever. And something we always thought we would do is open a brewery, and but life kind of gets away from you and time goes by, and the next thing I know, my dad was 56 years old and he was in a nursing home sick. And so those days, the dreams kind of came to an end of starting the brewery. But meanwhile, I'd started a career in gaming, meaning the casino business, tribal gaming. And I was managing casinos for the Iowa Tribe, which is my tribe up in Perkins, and making good money. And who wants to leave good money to go be poor as an entrepreneur? So I just never took the dive. And then when my dad passed away, he literally passed away. So Zach, I think I've told you this story before, but when he was in the nursing home and he was close to dying, I was going through his stuff at his house, and I found a book that's basically, it's the Bible of home brewing. And I'm thumbing through it and a piece of paper falls out, and it was one of my dad's recipes. And so, man, I was like, man, I'm gonna brew this beer and take it to him and let him taste his own beer one more time. And so I did that, and he loved it. And I got kicked out of the nursing home that day for bringing alcohol in. And like, I mean, the guy's about to die. You know, what's
Yeah.
this
What
beer
do you
gonna do
care?
for him?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably gonna help him actually. And so then I took some of the beer with me to a homebrew club meeting, and we still have this homebrew club called the Red Earth Brewers here in Oklahoma. And a lot of the breweries here in Oklahoma started in that homebrew club. So it's kind of like,
Wow.
reminds me of one of those VH1 documentaries, how it's like
Yeah.
Bob Seger and the Eagles were all hanging out together when they were young, and next thing you know, they're all famous. Anyways, I take the beer to the meeting, and all these guys are like, man, you should put this in this homebrew competition that's coming up in Dallas called the Blue Bonnet Brew Off. And so I was like, okay, that sounds kind of cool. I never thought about putting it in a contest, you know. So I sent it off, and I drove down to Dallas on the weekend that they were having the actual event, but I had to leave before they did the awards ceremony because we had our big tribal gaming conference in Phoenix. And so I had to fly to Phoenix. And when I landed in Phoenix, I had all these voicemails of people yelling and screaming that I won, you know, you won, you won. So I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to get back to Oklahoma in a week, and I'll go get my medal. I'm going to take it to the nursing home, put it in my dad's room. And so I get in, I leave the airport, get to the hotel, get checked in, and kind of settling in my room. My brother called and he said, Dad just passed away. And I just like, you know, in shock. Still get kind of choked up. But
Yeah.
and so basically, it took me a couple days to be able to get a flight back to Oklahoma. And so I'm at dinner like that night with our tribal chairman at that time and our CEO. And they told me, hey, you're going to get this job. We're going to build a new casino and you're going to run it, you know? And so it's like, you know, all this is happening at the same time my dad died. And then, but one of them said, hey, whatever happened to you and your dad starting a brewery, you know? And I was like, man, yeah, that's a good point. I should do that, you know, and I am getting told I'm going to, you know, this new career, bigger, you know, promotion, but all I think about was quitting and starting a brewery. And so I kind of had a little napkin and I was telling myself, you know, I remember going to the nursing home and visiting my dad and all these old people and they're just waiting to die. And I'd sit out there and talk to them, and so many of them were just full of regret. That's all they had was regret, all the things they didn't do. And so I told myself, I have to do this, and I have to give myself a deadline. It can't just be one of these days, because I've been saying one of these days for a long time. And so I wrote on a little napkin. I said, I'll have my brewery by the time I turn 40. I was 35 at the time. So I said, I got 5 years. I'm going to spend 2 years brewing every weekend in my garage and perfecting my craft. And then I'll spend a couple of years like putting together a good business plan and figuring out exactly how I want it to be. And then I'll spend a year trying to figure out who's got my money because I didn't have it. And that's what kept me from ever doing it, you know, as I grew up poor in Little Axe, Oklahoma, and how am I going to get $1 million, you know? And so we brewed I turned 40 in October of 2018. And 2 weeks later, we brewed our first batch and Skydance was underway. And then, it's been a heck of a ride ever since. COVID happened not long after that. We went from a year thinking we'd be in the Brewers Union for a year to being in there for almost 3 years before we finally got open. And Zach was a big part of that, of helping us get that other location open and built. And we barely made it. Zach, I
Barely.
don't even know if I ever told you, but like when we opened, I think we had $2,000 or less in the bank account, you know, and if there'd have been another month delay or something, we'd have never made it.
Sure. Oh, we'd have got it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of, you know, and then a few years ago, we had a tribal chairman who was resigning from office. You know, some stuff went on there and he was going to have to resign. And the rest of the business committee came to me. That's what we call our leadership, is the business committee. And so they came to me and they said that they wanted me to be vice chairman temporarily because the current vice chairman would move up to chairman and they could appoint a vice chairman until the next election. And I was like, man, I always knew my grandpa was chairman for 32 years. So I was like, I always knew I wanted to do tribal leadership. I thought it'd be later. But remember, I always said, you think you got forever to do something. And I said, no, I'm not. It's not later. Got to do it now. And it was perfect for me because it was going to be like 9 months and I'd serve as vice and then come back to the brewery and do what I want to do. And I could say, I served and I did my part. And so I did that. And then, about 3 months before that election was to come up and I would be done, that a lot of our elders and my family and the other business committee members came to me and they said, you just need to be the chairman. You need to run for chairman. And I thought about it and, you know, prayed about it and had had a good conversation with Bobby and my family about it, and she felt like we could still do the brewery with me, playing politics and pretending to be a leader, and so I ran and I won by 7 votes, and
Ooh, wow.
yeah, and so here I am. It's been almost 3 years, and I've got another election coming up in June, and I've decided that I'm going to run again and see how it goes, and that'll probably be it after that one. Of course, that's what I said, when I was vice chair. But so so yeah, here we are. Now we're about to open this Midwest City location, and we're trying to work out a deal on a third location in a casino somewhere here in Oklahoma, and hopefully we get it done. And we're just growing. There you
You're
go.
probably going to see Kale a lot because he's literally a mile from you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
good, good.
watching I'm watching your build.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
over here on Air Depot.
It's been a process. There's been some delays, not construction wise, but just, on the
Mhm.
permitting, and not even permitting, but just the federal government side
Right.
of stuff with alcohol. But we're finally getting real close now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's such a beautiful if anybody's ever done anything entrepreneurial, your story tells so much of that because I think we've all had those moments where we looked at each other and it's like, I got like maybe 2 pennies to rub together.
Yeah,
Is this
if
gonna
that.
make it? Is this gonna go? And then there's also
Dollar
those
menu.
right, right?
Yeah.
And ramen and whatever else I
Yeah.
can scrape together to get through that week, and I love that story though because I also think that most people don't start businesses. I think a lot of people from an entrepreneurial perspective don't realize from the outside looking in, they don't realize they think, oh well, you just wanted to own your own business. And it's like, no, 90% of I think it's 90%. I'd have to look this statistic is purely kale. So but most of us, I would say, start our businesses with more behind them than just, I want to brew beer or I want to make money doing this. I want to own my own. Like there's a heart behind it. And your story speaks to that with the connection to your father and your history and your culture and everything that grew up in and saying, no, well, no, I want to do something here.
Yeah.
And this is the way I'm going to do it. But it's going to mean more than just good beer.
Yeah,
Although the
Yeah.
beer is really good.
it is very good. For our listeners, if you have not tried Skydance beer, you need to try it because I don't like craft beer, but I like every beer that Skydance produces. So, well, and kind of to that point, I went to a leadership conference yesterday out at EOC, and they were talking about that dopamine is an action chemical. It only enacts because the perspective of it is, okay, well, I get a dopamine hit from doing X. For people crazy like us, a lot of times that can be tied to entrepreneurship. But in the reality of it, dopamine is actually a action driver. You don't get it from doing it. You get it before you actually do the action.
Mhm.
And so things like starting a business, you have to find the basis and the purpose, and there has to be a life purpose in that for you to really endure what it takes to be an entrepreneur and
Yeah.
getting through the days with 2000 left in the bank. You're still on a wing and a prayer of, God, I hope this works.
Yeah, I used to preach back when I had my podcast. I used to preach about, man, everybody should just jump in. If they have a dream to open a business, they should just do it and take action. And
Yeah.
I still believe it. I still believe in the take action part. Like for me, it was a lot of delays of like fear, and stuff like that. But I've come to learn that entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and I think some of that advice that I gave in the past of, yeah, man, do it, was bad advice, because what I've learned over time is not everybody's cut out for it. And some of the things that come along during the journey are very testing, challenging. Test your fortitude. They test your purpose. I always talk about knowing your why and having a strong purpose for why you're doing it. And I have a lot of different purposes, but one of them, my dad, if I went out of business, or if I quit, I'd have to go to heaven one day and see him and have to explain that to him. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's his legacy is a big part of it. But then representing other Native people in entrepreneurship, showing that, somebody that came from the res or came from a place like they came, like where I came from, that they could do it. And so that's a big part of it. But it's for a lot of people I don't think they have the why. And if it is what you're saying, which is, they want to own a business,
Yeah.
that's not good enough. The freedom to do things your way, it's important and it is a good thing, but you end up not doing anything your way. You end up, everybody's your boss when you're an entrepreneur, and especially me, I've got customers coming in every day that are my boss. And so it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
No.
to step back a little bit, because you're obviously, you have a history of leadership with, being, senior management for gaming, and then now, owning and directing your business, and then guiding and, sitting as chairman for Iowa Tribe. Where do you think that leadership, because that's innate, like that doesn't just manifest in that type of leadership. What do you feel like shaped that for you? Like where do you get that guidance from?
It's a lot of things, man. I think I've probably got the perfect storm. I'd like to take a lot of credit for like saying I created it and I learned it and I did all this stuff. But honestly, like it's a portion, a percentage of that is just probably DNA. My grandpa, like I said, he was chairman for 32 years. My other grandpa on the white side of my family, he was a state senator. And when he died, he was Oklahoma county assessor he'd been in there from the early 70s till he died in the mid 90s, and so he was politician, just that leadership stuff. And then I think some of it I credit a lot of it. I was so lucky that even though I went to this little bitty high school in Little Axe, Oklahoma, I had some of the greatest coaches in sports that didn't just teach me how to dribble or throw a football or how to hit a baseball. I mean, they preached leadership and accountability and team atmosphere, thinking of other people first. These were things that I just grew up learning from those guys, and I'm still friends with all my old coaches from back then. And it's because I don't want to lose that contact and lose, the ability to reach out to them and learn even more of that kind of stuff. But it's been that. And then I think God has just blessed me. Like I'm lucky that I've fallen into some roles. I definitely spent some time as a tribal police officer, and that really taught me how to kind of have a little more presence and lead a little bit more. And then growing up poor with a single dad, one of those things, everybody in the house learns how to lead when you grow up like that. It's you all take responsibilities on and take care of them and do them. You have to lead each other. And so it's just been I've been lucky in that way. A lot of people would say growing up like that was bad luck. It was great luck. It was good luck for me. I would never change it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
That's
agree with that.
that's a unique take, because I think a lot of people look at, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that I talk to that are like, I came from this, and we deal with it in the construction industry a lot. Not, a bunch of people that we've talked to in the design and construction industry, specifically construction, they didn't start out trying to be in construction, and they got lucky with things that happened, and they find a path forward. And I think there's a beautiful thing about construction, and part of what we talk about on this podcast, and we'll get into a little bit more, is, your development, how you're impacting construction and economic development and those kinds of things. But we see there's a very open nature to the construction industry that's kind of different than a lot of other industries, in the sense that Zach didn't start out as a PM. you know, I was in architecture and then fell into construction, did that and development for close to 7 years, and then have come back and started my own thing in design. And so it's like it's a training ground, for a little bit of a training ground for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and credit to you, because I firmly believe you can look at life with two different mentalities. And it sounds very much like you are an opportunist in the aspect of there's all of these things that could be perceived as negative, but you've taken those and used those as building blocks as a benefit. And, it's kind of that there's the Navy SEAL that, whatever bad happens, he says, good. Well, you didn't get that job. Good. Now I have
Good.
more time to be better at this. Didn't
Yeah.
get the
Yep.
funding that I needed. Good. Well, it's going to force me to learn to be more resourceful.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
sounds like a lot of your mentality is kind of based in that of no matter what happens, I'm going to take it and I'm going to leverage it
Mhm.
for the better.
Well, and I would say, one of the biggest things I kind of in this journey of trying to improve myself and going through that self-improvement process and becoming when I was a new leader, I started studying a lot of leaders and studying people like Zig Ziglar and, these people who, I listened to them. I used to drive an hour and a half to work every day, which I do again now, but that's a lot of podcast and audiobook time,
Yeah.
and so some of that stuff has just been entrenched. But in the past probably 7 years or so, I've really kind of latched on to studying a lot of stoicism. And what you just mentioned, Zach, is like the epitome of stoicism, and there's a phrase, amor fati, and basically what that means is that you embrace things as they happen and as they are. You don't fight it, you don't try to avoid it, you don't complain about it. It just is what it is. You actually accept it and you actually like it because it's what it's meant to be. And then you work with that and you do what you're supposed to do with it instead of against it. And so lot that when you really truly think that way and believe that way, these things that happen that could be a negative or a roadblock, you don't get too upset about it. It just becomes, you don't like it all the time. That doesn't mean you're just muted to emotion and stuff, but what it does is it tells you it quickly changes your mindset from complaining, which you will for a second, to okay, that's what it is. It is what it is. Now what? This is what it was, I wanted it to be. It's not. So, but you can't do anything about that. You can only control what you can only control. So I'm not going to try to control things that are out of my control. So now what do I do next? What's the
Sure.
next step?
Yeah. Well, and I think I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs share that, and whether it is innate to who they are as a person or it is learned by just being in it and getting slapped across the face more times, and you learn that reaction of it's okay, it's a problem, yeah, it's not pleasant, but we're going to deal with it and we're going to get through it. I think you have to have that both in leadership and in just general entrepreneurship.
How do you take and I love that. I love that concept. I've read some stoicism. I'm a fan. Little Marcus Aurelius every now and then. So how do you take that? You're going for your second term, right? Second term. Am I correct in that?
Yep.
You're
Yep.
running for that and you taking this idea of development growth. When you move into a leadership position like that, how do you what are your goals with going for a second term? What's the impact that you're looking to make? Because I think that's really interesting. And then how do you take that and bring that culture to the people you're around as a leader? Because I think that's something that both positions that you hold as a business owner and as chairman, you are influential. People are looking up to you. They're looking at you. They're saying, "What are you doing?" You're looking at this, information, this
Yeah.
wisdom that you just dropped on us. You're
Yep.
going for a second term. Unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that so a lot of people are going to jump on a podcast like this or something. They're going to try to give you this really selfless answer that's just the perfect answer, and it's going to be all about helping people and and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I'll get out of the way is that if anybody tells you that the things they're trying to accomplish in life aren't somewhat self-centered, meaning like for me, what will I be remembered for? I want to leave a legacy. I want people to talk like they did about my grandpa that was 32 years chairman. I want to accomplish things that because our life is so short, that, is there something that lives past that? What will my grandkids be able to say that their grandpa did? And so there's some of that is the driving force, but I will tell you that a big thing when I got into tribal leadership that I really wanted to do was make sure that, so my grandpa, when he was chairman for 32 years, I used to ask my uncle who was on the committee with him at the time. I was like, man, people around here, they either hated him or loved him, but a lot of people hated him. How did he keep getting elected over? Because those were 2-year terms back then. I'm the first one to have a 3-year term, what we changed the Constitution, but it was 2-year terms. So you're talking 16 elections,
Yeah.
And so I asked him, how did he keep getting elected if everybody was always so mad at him? And he said that no matter, he might fire somebody or have to get rid of somebody or make a decision somebody doesn't like, but everybody knew that his intentions were to do what was best for the people, do what was best for the tribe. And he took care of people. He took care of people. If he saw people struggling, if he saw people in pain, he saw people in need, he did things governmental wise through the tribe to help people. And I've always held on to that. And I can just remember my other grandpa. That's the way he was when he was a state senator and a county assessor. And he always preached that. And I've learned that the best leaders, the greatest leaders, it's always about other people. It's never about what they need to do. And so I'm always constantly trying to think that, you're not a leader if nobody's following you. And so anytime you ever get an email from me or something, you'll see a little signature down at the bottom that I stole from Zig Ziglar that says you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. And when I first ever heard that, I rewinded that podcast probably 20 times and heard him say that over and over and over and heard him explain it. And it's never left me that if so at the brewery, the people I lead, the team that works here, if I give them everything they have in order to be successful, then Skydance will be successful, which means I'll be successful. Same thing at the tribe. If I put all of our employees and our tribal members in a position to succeed, then I'll be successful. And so even though I've got that, there's a part of me that wants to be me successful and I want that legacy. If I'm thinking about that all the time, it'll never happen. But if I'm genuinely doing things for other people, trying to do better the lives of other people, better the tribe, make the tribe better. We talk about in the tribal world, 7 generations. So everything I do, every decision that I do at the tribe, I'm constantly thinking about how it affects the next 7 generations. And when you do that, not only, does that just work better, it's not only is that, structurally a better way to look at leadership. I believe God, I believe the creator kind of has a say in making things fall into place when you're constantly doing what he wants you to do, which is look out for other people.
Yeah. Well, you reap what you sow.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Well, and I love that. And I think it's a perfect transition because I do want to kind of get into a little bit more of the aspect and the big role that tribal politics and tribal economics play in Oklahoma. It's this podcast is out there publicly, but it could be anybody in the United States listening to it, but we want to focus specifically on what makes Oklahoma better. And Kayla and I were talking the other day, doing a little bit of research. Tribes and nations in Oklahoma being the largest concentrated, group of federally recognized tribes and nations.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Their economic impact in Oklahoma, the GDP combined is greater than the next 50 countries in the world.
Yeah.
So, which in, I didn't pull exactly where that lands. We have greater than at least 50 global countries, the combined economic impact in Oklahoma. And, a lot of that is construction and development. There's gaming and there's private industry that is owned by the tribes and nations. But if you look at everything that the tribes and nations are doing, it is development, whether it be road and bridge in partnership with the counties, or that's grant money that is being, applied to ARPA money. ARPA money was a huge injection into the state. I think it was either Choctaw or Chickasaw got almost $1 billion, I think, in ARPA money. That is an injection into the state's economy and to the communities that never would be there without the nations. And so, I wanted to kind of start down that direction of, at least for the listeners that don't know, what is sovereignty, and how does that impact development and how projects are approached from a tribes and nations perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the real basic answer for sovereignty is just that it's our ability to self-govern. You know,
Mhm.
it's our ability to govern ourselves, and you know, it's not exactly like another country, but I think of tribes as like a state. You know, the state of Oklahoma is a sovereign state and has its own ability to govern itself as opposed to being governed just as a union. You know, and I think I think a lot of people misunderstand that about tribes. I think, you know, it's funny. I hear a lot of talk sometimes, especially these days. You know, in our state, we have a governor who likes to say things about tribes a lot, but a lot of times there's a misunderstanding that tribes are a burden on the taxpayer, that we're getting all this money from the government and we're just handing it out to our tribal members to buy groceries and, you know, like a welfare state. And it couldn't be further from the truth, you know, but people have to realize we have sovereignty because we have treaties that we signed with the US government, that our ancestors, when they were removed from their lands, sign treaties with the US government, and the US government signs treaties with sovereign nations. And so that's what gave us sovereignty, and that's what created that. And so we have a government to government relationship with the US government. And the only thing is, if you think of a tribe sort of like like a municipality, there's a big difference, is that we don't have a large tax base. We don't have all of our citizens living in an area paying property taxes. You know, those property taxes are going to the state. And so what happens is we have to create you know, business. We got to create business to create that revenue to have those services for our people, whether they're health services or household assistance or food assistance for our elders and stuff like that. And so we've learned how to not only operate like a government, but we have to be entrepreneurs. You know,
Yeah.
we have to have an ability to create that revenue. And so that's what we've done. And the construction part of it, all the other things you mentioned, like gaming and all that stuff, it all plays into construction. I mean, right now I'm building a giant casino. That's been a big, massive construction project that I've been on since the day I got into office, and it's just now about to conclude. And so, you tribes do a lot of construction projects. They own construction companies. You know, a lot of development. I'm glad you brought up like the federal roads and road monies and stuff. You
Mhm.
know, I'm putting a good $40 million into roads in Lincoln County and over the next year and a half, and building bridges and things that a lot of us tribes are in rural areas. You look at
Yeah.
Lincoln County, I think it's one of the top 2 or 3 poorest counties in the entire state. And if the Iowa tribe of Oklahoma was not there to build some of that infrastructure and do those roads, then and bridges, then where would they get done at? You know, and so, you know, we're building a brand new $40 million clinic right now, and that clinic does not just serve Native Americans; it serves the entire public. And so, pretty much everybody that lives in Perkins, Oklahoma, or South Stillwater, or North Lincoln County, they're going to that clinic to get their services.
Right.
So we bring that value to the state. And yeah, like you're saying, the economy. I mean, sometimes we just recently did an economic impact report that all the tribes put together, and that economic impact in some cases is bigger than a lot of states.
Yes.
And it's unbelievable to see,
Yeah.
and it just shows that get out of our way, let us be
Mhm.
sovereign, and we'll make it.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Lincoln County. I grew up just not too far south of Perkins, and there it's been a stale area of development for, I mean, 50 years, 75 years, and even then most of the buildings that were there were Corps of Engineer buildings built, turn of the century. So no, and being an Oklahoma native, growing up here, heck, I grew up right there intersecting between the Kickapoo tribe and Iowa tribe to the north, and Sac and Fox to the east, and Citizen Potawatomi to the southeast. And even being literally next door to those reservations, interacting with tribal members, I had no idea growing up, and even into my adulthood, really how much of an impact that the tribes and nations played and what all they contribute. Because it wasn't too long ago that gaming came into play. That was a new thing, and casinos started popping up, and
Mhm.
you would see, okay, well, there's an IHS facility coming in, or
Mhm.
all of these things. But it wasn't really and truly until I got into the construction aspect and working for tribes and nations that I really got to see the depth of what all is actually being provided to those communities, what's being offered back to the state,
Yeah.
what is being forcefully injected of federal money coming in that's going right back out into the economy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Well, I actually had an argument recently with we were having a little issue with the rural water district where we're building a new casino, which we basically told them to, go somewhere and I'll just drill and put up a water tower. So that's what we did. But one of the comments that was made was, well, you guys do all this stuff just for yourselves, And I said, well, I heard you supporting this idea of our president saying, America first. Well, I'm Iowa Tribe first, and I support America first too. That doesn't mean America only, and it doesn't mean Iowa Tribe only. It just means first. And so there's a lot of these things that we have to do through economic development and just developing properties to really be able to take care of our people. And when we provide those services to our people, I don't think a lot of people understand that, yeah, I am taking care of my people, but that is lessening the load off of the state. When I'm giving, when we have businesses that do really well, and we pay dividends to our members. That's less need for welfare for those people. That's less need for food stamps. That's when we build something and we have a daycare that's for our people. Well, that's there's not a lot of daycares. There's a lack of
Yeah.
daycare services in the state. And so
Mhm.
when we do that, that's another group of people that don't need to go use the daycare in town or whatever. And so there's the town of Kearney. Zach, I know you know where Kearney is right
Oh yeah.
there.
Mhm.
They can't afford to even have a police officer. So we took over their police. We got the state to agree to that, and we're paying for their police. We're using because we have so many tribal members that work there. So
Right.
the tribes are very much, yeah, we put our people first, but we're about the community as a whole, and that's in our culture. It's the way we've always, been. It probably to our detriment at one point in time, and so that's the purpose of what we do is community and taking care of people and lessening that impact on the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah. Well,
I
Kale,
love that. Go ahead.
you and I were just talking about, you know, one, I think it doesn't get talked about a lot. Obviously, we have an adversarial relationship with the state government and with tribes, which I want to say props to you. Just what I have seen from Intertribal Council and you creating connections with other tribes and nations that maybe hadn't previously been connected or are now actively working together to solve some of these issues that are plaguing between the state government and with tribal nations. You know, props to you for doing everything that you've done there, because it seems like every time I turn around, you're right in the middle of something going on.
Yeah, some of that is little man syndrome. We're a little tribe, and so I want our tribe to be front and center, and I'm constantly trying to put our name out there and stuff and be involved. But my grandpa also used to say all the time that you're either at the table or you're on the menu. And
Mm.
if we're just sitting in our little offices playing tic tac toe or something on the computer, then we're not out there involved with the state government or the federal government. I'll be in DC here in a couple of weeks to meet with our senators and congressmen and national gaming Indian organizations and stuff. And so those are little things that I want if there's gonna be policies in place, law changes and things like that. I want to make sure that the Iowa tribe of Oklahoma is represented and has a say in it. I
Yeah.
just got off before this Zoom call. I just got off a Zoom call with the Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association. It was me and every other tribal leader. I'm a board member on that association. We're trying to get sports betting passed. And so we're working on
Heck yeah.
legislation and, the big tribes versus the little tribes is a thing sometimes. And when the little tribes aren't involved in those meetings and those conversations, then it's easy for laws to get passed where it benefits just the bigger tribes. And so I've probably been the most vocal person in those meetings because I want to make sure that not only the Iowa tribe, but all the smaller tribes
Yeah.
have an equal footing in that world, because sports betting is going to be tough. You may only have 7 or 8 tribes that actually get to operate in it, and we'll be one of them because we have that relationship with Caesars. But also at the same time, I want the laws to make sure that it works for us, and so that happens all the time. And I think I'm in a unique situation where my other grandpa was a politician, so I know a lot of politicians in the state and in Oklahoma City. As a business owner in Oklahoma City, I've gotten to know a lot of them, and it puts me in a little bit unique perspective to be able to relate to both sides. And I think it gives me that opportunity to have those meetings and get that FaceTime with people.
I love it. You said a good thing there, because I think it's true of so many aspects of. I mean, Zach and I are fighting right now on many levels, just trying to bring awareness to the idea of licensing for
Hmm.
contractors within the state. We're talking about some of that stuff. We're talking about all these different aspects, and if you're not advocating for the things that you believe in or the things that you want to see happen, you know, to quote your grandfather, I think you said,
Hmm.
if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
That's right.
If
Yeah.
you're not advocating, you don't have a voice. You have to be out there and you got to be saying something. And I think that's really interesting. How does that, like, as you're looking at state or municipal systems and working in those, because you are so much, are there things about that when you're trying to develop within the tribal nations, and you're building a casino right now. Are there
Hmm.
things about that are harder for you as a tribe to build and develop because of state struggles there? Can you
Well, just
elaborate on that?
yeah, I mean, I got a perfect example of that, which
There you go.
is, one would be what I just mentioned, the rural water district in that rural area.
Mhm.
That, let's just face it, there's some people that probably don't like that natives are coming in and developing and doing things, and so that's been a struggle. But luckily we are sovereign, and we
Mhm.
do have the ability to do things, that a little unconventional. And then, but the biggest thing is with that, and I don't know who's gonna be watching this. I'm sure last time I said something on camera about Kevin Stitt, the Able Commission showed up at the brewery a couple
Oh
hours later.
God.
But but
We're not live streaming this.
yeah,
No, I can
but
edit.
but I will say that we had agreed on an exit off of that turnpike that would have
Mhm.
made a road that goes right next to the casino, and obviously would have been a huge impact not only for the casino and all the jobs we're going to create in there, but also just the economy in that area. And it was agreed upon, plans were drawn up, and then the governor got into the fight with the tribes over the gaming compact. And when we said, "Hey, where are we at on the exit?" "Oh, well, that compact issue, that's not going to work for us." And so we haven't been able to get that exit. And so now what I'm doing on the political side is, I know that his term's coming up. He'll be done at the end of this year. And so what am I doing in the past year is, I'm talking to Gittner Drummond, I'm talking to Charles McCall, I'm talking to Cindy Munson, I'm talking to all the
Yep.
people who are going to possibly be the next governor, the director of ODOT, the director of the Turnpike Authority, Gatz he's all for this project. And so we'll get all those things, but that's the political side of it, that you have to be able to have those relationships and conversations. And Zach's been in the brewery enough to know that in our brewery in Oklahoma City, there's a lot of people coming over from that capital. One of our regular customers is in there regularly, become one of my best friends. He works for Mark Wayne Mullins' office, and so he was able to help us get this TTB license figured out for Midwest City real quick. And so those relationships,
Yeah.
Zig Ziglar also used to say the key to success is winning relationships. And that's important. And you can't just be adversary and, oh, we're sovereign and we don't have to deal with
Mhm.
you. You gotta have those relationships with people and do things that are beneficial for both sides.
Yeah. No, with it's kind of related. What do you think? Because I think that there is some confusion when you say sovereign, and we'll assume that the larger majority of Oklahoma really doesn't understand what that means. They've heard it. We've exposed to it, probably exposed to tribes and nations more than most other states in the United States, but still, I mean, even by my own admission, like I grew up right next to it and still really didn't truly understand. Uh, what do you think are some of the misconceptions that, architects and contractors, yeah, I guess that'd be the best way to put it. What do you think some of the misconceptions are that they have about working with tribes and nations?
Well, I think what I would say is that, it's probably, I know you've done some work with tribes, and as you've gone through it, you probably got more comfortable with it. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that sovereignty card getting thrown out there and getting out of a contract with nothing happening to the tribe or whatever. And there is a lot of discussion among tribes about that if we want to be stronger economic powers and do more things besides just build casinos, then we've got to learn how to work around that infrastructure of sovereignty, and be able to be more inviting for out the rest of the world to do business with us. Tribes now are doing a lot of business with foreign countries. We're creating foreign trade zones and stuff like that, and so the idea of doing business with sovereign nations is not a new thing. People have worked with the federal government. They've worked with other countries. They've gone across the border to do work. We just happen to be one of those sovereign nations. And what I always tell a lot of people, especially newer to the contract business or to any kind of service type business, is that while you got to do your homework and understand that, and with tribes, a lot of lawyers get involved in every deal that we do because we are government. But I think a lot of people, what they start to realize is that the tribes also have a lot of ability to create. They've got a
Mhm.
lot of financial stability. Most of the tribes, anyways, they've got steady streams of income, access to grants, just like a state does. Grants are not just a thing tribes get from the government. States get them, cities get them, counties get them, we get them. And so I think it's a boogeyman that is blown out of proportion a little bit. It does exist. I'll be honest with you. I mean, it is something to consider when you're doing work with the tribe. Is you need to understand sovereignty. You need to understand that. But there's a lot of that's built into contracts. There's workarounds built into that, limited waivers of sovereignty, things like that. That are done. And so I never understood exactly why it's such a big problem for people, but I think it is just don't understand. They're not around it all the time. So and I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of it too is a lot of people do work with the tribe. I think they forget how much a government entity like the tribe has to go through so many strenuous audits,
Yeah.
and everything is looked at with a microscope. And so therefore, sometimes it can be harder to work with tribes because the steps in place of bidding things out, and every tribe's going to have their own laws and ordinances about how projects are bid out and how the contractor has to bid out subcontractors, and all of that stuff it can seem like a lot, but you
Mhm.
you start doing work in Indian country and you do a good job, you're going to be really busy
Yeah.
Yeah.
because that's what tribes are looking for, is they don't trust everybody all the time. And so if somebody's doing a good job and they're doing things the right way, they tend to stick with them.
I would say that in my experience, having done work with tribes, but also just in my experience living in Oklahoma, growing up here, born and raised here, um, I think you have two stigmas working. The tribes have been taken advantage of in a lot of ways and felt that impact on their economy. Um, that makes them hesitant. They're like,
Yeah.
"Wait a minute, let's make sure."
Yeah.
And then you have what we were just discussing. Um, I think that part of what I see being worked on, and you're one of the key proponents of getting the word out and talking about that. We see a lot of tribes working on that right now. It's like we want good development. We want good things. We're doing this for our people. And if you can understand grant process would be a big one.
Yeah.
And understand, as you said, tribal contracting process. Like they are going to have their own way. There's actually a lot of flexibility and creativity
Hmm.
in tribal
Yeah.
work because there are things that you could do, like you just said. Well, I'm gonna drill my own well and put it in my water,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
water tower.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's things that would put a full stop to projects in the private sector
Yep.
that you can bring to the table. And do you have, other than the water tower, do you have ideas on how we continue to grow in that relationship? Are there things that can be done from the construction and design side? Say, hey, if you want to work with the tribes, this is something you can do to help build that relationship.
You know what's interesting with tribes when it comes to building relationships? It's just presence, showing up and meeting in person and understanding their culture and learning their ways of doing things and kind of paying homage to that a little bit and just respecting that in some way, goes a long ways. And then I think, some of it too is just that you mentioned like the trust factor. That is a tough thing for a lot of tribes because now you're starting to see a lot of younger tribal leaders come up who have experience in business and banking or finance or construction or whatever. But for a long time, it was who's the oldest guy that everybody likes, and he's the chief or the chairman, and they didn't always have a lot of business experience or construction or any of that kind of stuff. And so you would have a lot of instances where tribes got taken advantage of. And I still think there's a lot of people out there that think, oh, it's a tribe, they'll pay twice as much. Or,
Right.
oh, they have 7 casinos. We'll just price it as high as we want it to be and we'll get it, and so that happened for quite a while. And then that created a lot of distrust among the tribes, as far as how they look at the outside world. And so I think a lot of it is just, man, I think if you show up to a meeting with the tribe and they see that you've done your homework and you've got some respect for their culture and who they are and you address them properly, those formalities mean a lot in our culture. It might not mean a lot when the three of us go sit down and have a beer, but in that setting, it means a lot. And you'll have elders in the room who are watching closely to see who I'm doing business with. And when they see that, it really drops a lot of the guardrails down. And it's all, like I said earlier, it's all about relationships. I think if you can just learn who those decision makers are and actually have good relationships with them because you care about them and not because you're trying to get something from them, I think that changes the whole landscape completely.
Man, I don't know if I ever told you. So, obviously, in the last couple of years, we've had the opportunity to work for several tribes and nations. But that first one, which I called you on it to get some advice because Kale and I went up to Pawnee Nation to go chase a design build package. And which, I mean, the stigma was if you are not native, that you're not going to get tribal work in Oklahoma. And so, we said, screw it. Let's go be stupid and go chase it anyway. Got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And so, we went up there and, at least in our presentation, one of the big points for us was we've grown up in these areas. We've seen the level of service and the level of construction and the quality of the construction that the tribe has received for the last 75 years. Let us, give us the opportunity to show you something better. We can show you something better. We can show you something of quality. Just because we care. Like, these are our communities. We may not be native, but these are still the communities. These are still our neighbors. These are individuals that we care about because we care about bettering Oklahoma. And the tribes and nations are a default part of that. And so, ultimately we ended up getting it, which when I called you, so man, I mean to tell you, it was the scariest thing that I've ever done in my freaking life. Because one, Kale, yeah, I know you remember the recommendation to give tobacco to the panel members in medicine bags came from Jake. And which I don't think I ever told you, we could not find medicine bags to purchase. And we didn't want to just yeah. And so I went and found a leather shop over off of Reno that had Oklahoma buckskin or whitetail hide that had already been prepped. And we hand stitched medicine bags and got the tobacco. And then we're going up there. We're going up to, I think it was our interview. We're like, man, this could go sideways so fast. This does not feel right. We're some white guys walking in with some medicine bags that we've just stitched off of a picture off of Google. And man, you want to talk about nervous going in, like we're getting ready to get canceled. But no, ultimately, I think the panel members up there, one, they were very shocked. It was an immediate response of, "Where'd you get this?" And then we told them that we had put them together, we had hand stitched them, we had taken some wisdom, and this is where it came from. We just wanted to be thankful. Uh, it it immediately changed the air in the room of and it was after our presentation, like we had already, like, it was the last thing. And the amount of relationship that instilled from there on, ultimately we got that job. And I don't think it was necessarily because of that, but there was at least a different air in the room anytime that we met with them, because they knew that we were willing to go that extra mile.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's a great move, man.
Oh, thank you for the recommendation, but golly, man, I was nervous.
Yeah.
Kale remembers that.
I would
I
have loved
do.
to have been a fly on the wall.
Oh, dude.
I remember when the day that when you said you were going up there, I was like, I bet he's sweating.
I still actually, hang on one second.
No. When Zach told me that that's what he was like, I think that's what we
There
need
you
to
go.
do.
Yeah.
That was one of
And
the last ones that was left.
I said, I told him, I said, I can get tobacco. I know, I know where to get tobacco, like loose leaf, like,
Yeah.
and quality, not
Yeah.
gas station.
Yeah.
you know, tobacco. And I said, so I can do that. I said, but I don't know where you're getting these medicine bags. That's on you.
We found them. Well, man, we're coming right up to an hour, and gosh, there's a whole lot of topics that I don't know if you've got a little bit more time, but
I got about 10 minutes.
okay.
He's got 10 minutes.
Well, we kind of touched on the opportunity that there is with tribes and nations. What is outside of presence and outside of just building that trust and interaction. I think it's important because there is so many non-native contractors and architects and firms that want to engage or might possibly want to be a part of native development, that they just have that assumption, well, I'm not even going to engage. I don't have a tribal card. What recommendation do you give to those individuals?
Well, I mean, the recommendation would just be that, tribes just want to do what everybody else wants to do, which is have a great product built. They want to get the best service that they can get. Doing business with other natives is important. And I preach that all the time as a tribal leader when I'm around in the state, talking at events or speaking about, things to other tribes. I push that a lot, but that's not really necessarily possible to just always have, because there's not a lot of natives in a lot of different industries. And so the bottom line is, in the end, I'm building a casino right now that we use a company that's not a native owned company. But the goal was to build the best casino, to get the best product,
Right.
And so that's just sort of what matters the most. So I would tell people not to be too concerned with that. I would just, go up there, be respectful, learn a little bit, just like you would anybody else. You go pitch to anybody else, you're going to learn something about them before you go meet with them and do your research. And so it's really the same thing, and go up there and be genuine and do the best that you can do.
That's great advice.
Do you want to do some quick? We
Yeah.
got 10, like
Yeah, kick
8
us off.
minutes. 8 minutes now. Something I wanted to ask, kind of a quick hit, just your hot take on this. But I think we talked about community. A lot of developers talk about community. People come in talking about community a lot. We see it in the construction and the design industry, but they rarely actually understand community. How do you see that from your perspective as you're trying to develop things both tribally and as an entrepreneur? How should we talk about community?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a tough question, but I think, that it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, I think because it feels good and sounds good or whatever. But what I have learned is that businesses or whether it's a business or a tribe or a city or a state is always more successful if the projects that they're doing are good for everybody around them. So for instance, we're building this tap room, this brewery restaurant here in Midwest City. And what really attracted me to it is there's not another brewery in Midwest City.
Nope.
And so we truly feel like not we think we'll be successful because the product's good and because the customer service is good and we know how to create a great environment and that kind of stuff. But the one of the big reasons we think it'll be successful long term is because we're bringing something to the community that they don't have. They don't have a brewery. They don't have. You don't see a native representation in Midwest City. You don't see this big beautiful patio that we've built out back where we're going to have our baby goats event and our live music and all of the things that we do. There's not places for that in Midwest City. And so not only will we be the hub for those types of events, but we'll be the community, the local watering hole for the people that live over here in these apartments by us or the Air Force Base, which is just down the street. And
Yep.
so thinking about what you're doing and is it bringing value to all of the people in the community? I mean, that's creating community, and doing things in a way that's beneficial and thinking about your neighbors. It's like the casino deal. Yeah, we're having those issues with the rural water district, but we're also fixing up, well, it's not fix up, or totally redoing the city of Chandler's wastewater system, and that's a benefit to the entire community. We're basically going to hire, we gave enough money to hire 3 more employees, and they'll be able to use that for future development in that area for years to come. We're creating 450 jobs. Will be more than that after we build the hotel. And so those are all benefits to the community. And that's what gives you long-standing, power to stay around and stay in business. And so that's I think as a government, it's easier to think like that. Like you kind of have to. I think entrepreneurs, business owners, if they thought a little more in that term, that method, it gives them a little more staying power. You look around, craft beer is struggling. Like breweries are closing down left and right. And I to be honest with you, the biggest thing that's kept us afloat is that tap room of ours is always busy. When everybody else's tap room is dead, we'll have bigger crowds than everybody else. And a lot of that's because we've built a community of people who they're members in our Skydance tribe, or they just live down the street and we have a place that's fun for them to just sit and relax, and they see the owners in there and they know us by name, and they're asking about our wedding and all these things. It's that community. Those people feel like they belong to something instead of just another business they could go walk into.
I love it. And I got one more. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs, young tribal members that say, see you as a leading example for Oklahoma natives? What would you say to them?
If I can do it, they can do it. I mean, I literally grew up in a mobile home in the middle of nowhere. My remote control was a pair of pliers, single dad, ramen noodles and commodity cheese and commodity milk, and so if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think the biggest thing is that you don't need luck or circumstances. You need to change up here. Something up here has to change. And I always had a roadblock in my head that kept me from thinking the way I needed to think, and being around other leaders. That's why podcasts like this are important, because what really got me to figure out that I could do it was that I listened to stories of other people and I saw people just like me doing it. And I was like, oh crap, if he can do it, I can do it. And so I think that's a big part. Just have faith in yourself. Know that if you can do it, and then don't ever give up. Don't ever quit, because if you start a business, you will be given opportunities to quit and you'll want to do it. So you better have a strong purpose and a reason why.
Yeah,
For sure.
I love it.
Well, man,
thanks. I was going to say,
go
thanks
for
for being on.
Yeah.
I'll ditto
I appreciate you guys.
Man,
Appreciate it.
For our listeners, what's the best way to engage with Skydance? Obviously, you guys are on social media. You've got 3 locations now.
Yeah. Well, we technically have a 3rd location that's in the Kickapoo Casino. We don't own it. It's just a licensing deal. They operate it. But man, you just get on all the social media channels and follow Skydance Brewing. I would urge a lot of people to follow Skydance Brewing Midwest City, because that's the new spot that we're trying to get followers on there so they know what's going on over here. And then just come see us. That's the best way. Come see us. Come enjoy the space and have a beer with me.
I love it.
Yep.
And for also on the other side, for individuals, businesses, architects, contractors wanting to get to know and do business with Iowa Tribe, where should they be looking for opportunities?
Yeah, I think the best thing right there is just to go to our website, iowanation.org. You can see a lot of what's going on there. We're still trying to get better about, communicating what we're doing and what we're up to out there. But that kind of stuff, or follow Iowa Tribe Chairman Jake Keys on Facebook and send me a message. That's I think I'm the first chairman to really have a big presence on social media and try to get out there. But that's part of that. That's part of why, though. If there's opportunities out there, I want people to be able to get in touch with me directly.
Awesome. You're doing awesome, man. Yeah, awesome job, brother.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Kale, you want to take us out?
Yeah, well, this has been another episode of Constructive Criticism. Thanks, Jake, for joining. And you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. This is, Zach, what's our tagline again? This is where architects and
contractors build better together.
Do better together. That was Zach's little catchphrase.
There you go.
All right, guys, thank you. And
see you next time.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys.